my name is Patty Chan from the Center for Music Innovations, and today we'll be speaking with composer Jon Lin Chua, who's based in Singapore right now, and she's Toronto Chinese Orchestra's resident composer, and she's a wonderful musician on the erhu and piano, and also teaching music theory as well and composition. So, hello, Jon Lin, welcome.
Hi, Patty. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak.
Well, it's a pleasure. I find that it's very encouraging to see young composers write for Chinese instruments. And could you tell me a little bit about your background? Like, how did you get into music at all?
Well, I started on the piano when I was 6 years old. It was really just a matter of, because my cousin was learning piano at the time, so I just tagged along. It was one of those things I did not really have any idea what was very much idea really, or very much interest at that time. In fact, I would do things like make sounds around the room and ask my teacher, oh, what does this sound like? I wasn't really interested in actually sitting down and playing.
Oh,
Doing everything else. I'm really glad that my teacher encouraged that. She actually my first teacher allowed me to put my own words into songs, and sing and perform. So I think that did quite a bit for my musical development, although I did not become a very good pianist because I wouldn't sit down and play scales. Had I met a teacher who would have just shut me down straight away, I think probably I might be in a different place. I don't know.
So your teacher allowed you to be very creative.
Yes. I mean, she didn't necessarily, penalize me for not, following instructions and sitting down and playing exactly like how she would want me to play. Yeah. Many years later, I heard from a conductor, associate, a friend, who was in contact with her before she passed away, that she did mention to him that, oh, I was a very musical child. But I did not know that. I always thought I was a very naughty child who would not listen to her. But after that, I went on to learn the violin as well. And again, it was one of those things that, just done as a matter of exposure, to different things at a young age. I did not feel very much towards it as well. In fact, because I had a very strict teacher, so it kind of turned me off the instrument.
And how old were you? Sorry, how old were you when you started?
I started piano when I was 6. Yeah, I started violin, I don't know, 7 or 8. And tiny little violins, they don't make very good sounds. So naturally, I did not think it was it doesn't sound nice. And also it was really tiring for a child to be holding the violin for a long time. So I did not really have any very positive sentiment towards this instrument. Of course, not till very much later. Yeah. The first instrument that really, really intrigued me was the erhu. And that was when I was about 10. I came into contact with this instrument. I did not know what it was beforehand. And when I first heard it, I was like, wow, now this is a sound that I can really get on board with. Yeah, it's really different from all these other instruments that I've heard. Piano is like dang, 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 or violin is squeaky, of course, on child's violin. But the erhu has a very unique quality, right? It has the quality of the human voice is often described that way. And it's not just that, it's ever changing, it's dynamic, it's alive. Yeah, there's no one flat sound. Of course, you've had people who try to synthesize the sound of erhu, electronically. And I think a lot of there are some samples that can come very close, but I think there's just something you can't replicate, because it's the timbre, the nature of the sound itself is so dynamic, it's so ever changing, that it's so organic,
Right.
So yeah, that was something that really attracted me. I did not know all these nouns, all these adjectives at that time, but I just knew like, wow, this is something else. Yeah, it's something that actually interests me. It was intriguing, it was attractive, it was appealing. Yeah, captured my imagination. So I started on the erhu from then on. and continue playing.
And did you continue to play piano and violin at the same time?
Well, piano was something I continued, stopped for a while, but I did eventually play well enough to take it as a primary instrument when I was studying in Eastman, and which would be considered the level of maybe a minor in some other school. Yeah, so I survived. Yeah, I not excellent, not outstanding, but I survived. Yeah. And violin, I did actually pick it up briefly later on as well. I think late teens or early 20s. Just because I was interested, yeah. And by then I knew a lot more, and I appreciated it a lot more. So I think my level of violin is quite I can play some. It wouldn't sound too bad, yeah, but not anything too difficult. Yeah. That's my level of proficiency on these instruments.
And when did you get interested in composition?
Yeah, there wasn't a single aha kind of moment in my composition life. It just came to be in a very gradual way. I think as a performer, I never really I always knew I liked music, right? Not always, not since young, but at some point I knew I liked music, and I was quite serious about it. Maybe in my late teens, but I never really knew what at that time I did not know so much about different roles, right, in the music sort of scene. Yeah. The most obvious and the most the one that you see more of is, of course, the performance role. Yeah. And it was something that maybe is I did not find entirely satisfactory, having to just follow everything and play it exactly that way as written. At the same time, I think it might be a personality thing. I might seem very outgoing, but I'm actually quite introverted. In a way, I'm quite a private person. I'm not sure if actually, a performer type of persona is necessarily me. It's not really my type of personality. I feel like on some level, then actually it makes a lot of sense that being a composer, that I think that really resonated with me. It gave me ample space to explore the creative process of music, and also just work behind the scenes. Yeah. I did not have to. I mean, of course, when working, you have to have some interactions, right, with your colleagues and things. But it's a different type of interaction. Yeah, it did not involve putting myself out there. Which always made me feel kind of anxious. Really.
Really?
Yes.
But as a composer, you have to explain yourself too, explain your work and explain.
Yeah, sure. That I can do.
Yeah.
I don't know what's the difference. Performing is, to me, is a very high stress activity. As a professional performer, stage performer, to just play, on my own is fine. But I think being on stage is a sort of stress that for some people it's a there's an adrenaline rush. For other people like me, it's just stressful. Like putting myself, I feel naked on stage. It's just not really my type of thing. I feel.
Right. Well, I can understand that. It is a stressful career if you perform as a professional musician.
Yes, definitely. I think also the other thing about it's not just I feel a lot more at ease performing where I get some space to maybe improvise a bit. For instance, like when I was playing folk opera and things like that, it was a lot more casual, right? I did not have to follow every single note. I had a lot of space to do stuff, and it was ever changing. You actually had to watch the percussionist for when you change, or on the spot you probably had to do something else, and that I liked. And I wasn't really in the spotlight. I was in like accompanying, in the back. So that was something that I enjoyed, and I did not find stressful. I actually found it very fun, and fun in an engaging way. It wasn't just like I could switch off mentally or anything. But to have to play solo repertoire and play everything exactly the way. Wow, to me it's very stressful.
Right. So you were also interested in folk opera as well.
Yeah, I mean, there was just a little side interest, really. It was really just due to the fact that because I got to know some friends who did that stuff. Actually, I don't even remember how that started, but it was very fun. Yeah, so I just did it for fun.
But that's really interesting because as a young person, I don't know what the Chinese music scene is like in Singapore, but as a young person, were you ever like turned off from that type of music and more into, I don't know, the popular music of the time when you were growing up? Or like, why would you go towards folk opera, which is usually, well, over here, it's more seen more as, some things that adults and seniors are into?
Well, I think it's quite similar here. Yeah, it's definitely not mainstream. Yeah.
Right.
But then again, there were many traditional opera groups and other traditional music groups that were quite active.
Mm-hmm.
And so also from time to time they will get young musicians to play for them. So it's not something that's totally alien or rare for if you're a CO musician, you might have dabbled in it at some point as well. You know what I'm saying? It's not, yeah, it wasn't totally like weird or anything like that. Of course, growing up, I listened to uh, quite some canto pop as well, right? Yeah, in my so I of course I do have that in my consciousness as well, but this is Chinese music and folk music and all that. Again, I spent about 1 or 2 years of my childhood in China.
Mm.
Yeah, where I was exposed to some of these things, so it wasn't entirely a novelty kind of thing either.
Right.
Yeah, I mean it wasn't everyday life, but it's not weird and distant and totally alien. Yeah.
Okay. And I noticed that you went to study, your first degree was in philosophy. Now,
Yes.
how did that come about, and how does it all fit in?
I get this question every single interview.
Okay.
It's no, I think people are quite intrigued.
Yeah.
Why so? Yeah, to me, well, I guess yeah, it's probably interesting. um, well, it happened at a time when when I was applying for university, I've always had pretty good grades in school. So when I was going to university, of course, my parents were like, well, maybe get an actual degree first.
Okay. What does that mean?
So I'm a Bachelor of Arts, right? That's yeah. And so I went to the National University of Singapore. I got into the Faculty of Arts and Social Science. And at that time, I did not choose my major yet. And so it's somehow of all the majors, the one that intrigued me the most was of course the one that's deemed most impractical. Yeah, yeah, philosophy. But I loved it so much. I still do. I think it really fits my personality.
Mm-hmm.
I love dabbling in abstract concepts, and I like analyzing things. So it's really my cup of tea.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. And I think, well, did it affect your music in any way? And
I don't know if there has been any direct correlation. Maybe yes, for some pieces, certain pieces definitely I think I can see some type of direct correlation. But I think on the whole, definitely is shaped the sort of person I am, and subsequently the sort of composer that I am. Yes. I also tend to be a very analytical type of composer. And not every single composer works that way. Some composers, they are more in the flow. They like to just go with the flow and do things like that. But I always like to step back and think analytically. What am I doing? What are these elements that I'm doing? And yeah, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. It could be a strength, but it could also be sometimes it could be a limiting factor.
mm,
Mm-hmm. So I think it's good to strike a balance. Yeah, being between being analytical and not getting overly analytical. Yeah.
And then so when you studied composition at Eastman, right? Yeah, and I don't suppose they taught you how to write for Chinese instruments.
No.
So,
Not at all.
and
Yeah.
well, how did that affect, I guess, the composer that you are today, studying at Eastman?
Oh, plenty. I think I feel really indebted to Eastman, for the sort of quality education that I received there. Basically, I think one of the highlights of the Eastman program that's pretty much known is that they have a very rigorous academic program. So it may be a good thing or not so good thing for performers, right? There are different ideas on this. Some people think, oh, it's more important for performers to be just really focus on, their instrument, right? And not have to do so many other things. But of course, the Eastman approach is to make sure you're all rounded and really good in different things. I think for a composer, that's really necessary.
Right.
Yeah, besides just writing your own thing, Eastman really equipped me with really solid foundations on many things. Yeah. So as a composer, you had to also study a primary instrument. Okay, and so like I said, in another school, it'd be considered a minor. Yeah, because of the sort of things I had weekly studio lessons with my professor. I had to do juries, and I had to then there were studio recitals and studio class, things like that. So basically everything that a major does, but with, of course, with much lower expectations. Yeah, but the type of things we did were pretty much there. So you see, it's kind of a rigorous requirements, for a non-performing major.
Right.
Yeah, and also the oral skills and theory program in Eastman is excellent. I mean, it's really I learned so much. I was in the theory honors track, which was and there's a joke, they call it God theory. But I learned a lot from that class. And also music history. I mean, so it's a sort of very rigid, old style, traditional conservatory structure. You had to really make sure you got all these basics settled. But besides that, I met some very, very good teachers over there. And Eastman, one of the other highlights, I think, of the program is when you study composition there, you get to study with different teachers. In fact, it is encouraged. In most other schools, you basically just follow the same teacher from beginning to end.
Right.
But in Eastman, you're a student of the department. So you get to study with different teachers, unless you request not to, yeah, or some other reason, you don't. But otherwise, yeah, you get to work with different teachers, and they all have very different styles. They all have very different insights. They all have very different strengths, different everything. They write very different music. So I think that was excellent, really, in helping me find my voice or shape my composition personality. The other thing about Eastman that I really appreciate was the fact that the activity of composition and new music is very much supported by the rest of the school. It's almost like composition is built into the DNA of the school, because the first director of Eastman was actually Howard Hanson, an American composer. So Eastman, in Eastman's a sort of environment where people are very willing to try playing new compositions. In fact, it's the sort of place where performers would hound you, like, when are you going to write, a piece for me?
Wow.
It's not like some other places that I've heard, where you say you're a composer and people run away.
They don't want to try anything new, or yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. And then what made you actually start writing for Chinese instruments then?
Well, before I went to Eastman, then naturally, I mean, I play the erhu, right? So it's not new to me. It's not a musical culture that I was going into for the first time or something like that. But for some reason, I never really, I found it difficult to start. Before going to Eastman, I did write a little for Chinese instruments, but I do not consider any of those to be actually successful. And they're not in my current portfolio, I think part of it was a certain barrier, when you know something so well. I mean, it seems very natural. I'm a composer. I play the erhu. I should have, erhu works by now, but I don't. And the reason is, like I said, I think when you know something so well, so intimately well, sometimes it's not helpful.
Oh.
It actually creates a barrier in some way. I think for me, a barrier to imagination, to creativity, for some reason. I don't know what it is. I think it's the sort of thing like when people say, you can't teach your own child something, right? Something like that. It's because you're too
close.
familiar, too close. Yeah. So after I returned to Singapore in 2018, January of 2018, I started to, I actually took part in the Ding Yi Music Company Composium, which is an international composition competition for Chinese chamber music. So as you know, Chinese chamber music is also we do have a lot of traditional subgenres under this category, but contemporary Chinese chamber music is relatively new and new territory, I think. So I thought, hey, I'm gonna give it a go. I think it's very interesting, and I won a prize. In fact, I won two prizes. I won the first prize for large ensemble and the Young Singaporean Composer Prize as well.
Amazing.
And I kick-started certain things, yeah. And then Toronto Chinese Orchestra, you all engaged me as a composer in residence, and I started to work with Ding Yi and also other Chinese groups here and there, Chinese instrumental groups here and there. Yeah, and I think it also helped me with that prize-winning piece. It helped me break through a certain barrier. I found my way of reconciling the familiar with innovation, yeah, which I think lies at the heart of that piece, actually.
Are you very comfortable writing for Chinese instruments now? Like, do you feel equally at ease writing for, say, Chinese instruments as for Western instruments?
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah, I feel at ease. I'm not sure about equally because they're really quite different. I take a certain I take quite a different attitude, not consciously. It just happens that way. But yes, I feel like it's in me now. I can do it. The weird thing is my erhu work is still not out.
Maybe a little later, right?
Yeah, perhaps. Hopefully.
Yeah, and as well as a composer like that has experience writing for Chinese instruments, what advice would you have, say, for other composers that have never written for Chinese instruments before?
The first thing is of course to really get to know the instrument, not just okay, it has this sound, that's it, and it has this range. That's pretty superficial sort of get to know, right? But really get to know about what it can do, not just in terms of playing techniques, but also in terms of the performance gestures. Because like say a technique of a slide, for instance, you can't isolate it from certain fixed gestures that are associated with certain styles or subgenres. Yeah. So I think getting to know these things is in more detail is very good. Unfortunately, I think we don't really have many resources, right? Especially in English. Yeah, if you're talking about for international composers, we do have quite good orchestration textbooks that talk about instrumental capacities and techniques. But I think going further to explore these things perhaps require a lot of listening. Yeah, so listening would be key. I think nothing replaces that. Yeah, listening and just studying those things. Yeah, I was going to say score study, as you would recommend for Western repertoire, but then I realized again, it might not be very helpful because a lot of these nuances are not actually notated.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so to actually listen a lot to solo repertoire and you could make your own transcriptions, but to be aware of all these nuances, I think it would bring your writing to another level.
Okay, that's interesting. Like, how far, I guess, would they need to know the history stories and things like that, or like all the different styles?
I mean, this is not an exam, right? It's no.
Yeah.
As with I don't know if I can stipulate like, oh, you know, you should at least know all these before you should get started. No, I think that's not a healthy attitude to take either, right? I think sometimes it's good to just get your feet wet, even when you don't really know what you're doing. Definitely, and just do it. Yeah. I think a lot of Chinese instrumentalists and instrumental groups are very friendly in that way. You know, they are willing to try a lot of things. Some of them are really willing to get out of their comfort zones just to not accommodate, but to really explore what you have, what stuff that's out there. So yes, I don't think that composers should feel like they have to be equipped with all this knowledge and everything before they actually start. Sometimes the best way is to just start and work with an instrument. So maybe another tip besides listening would be to just make friends with instrumentalists, right? And from time to time, just write stuff for them, consult them a lot, hang out with them, have some jamming sessions, get to know them, get to know stuff that they play, not just for your own purposes, but the things that they actually play. Because I think a lot of musicians are willing to bend backwards sometimes. They even though it's not exactly idiomatic, but they try their best to do it, because they're very serious. But it might not be the best thing to do. Yeah. So I think composers should also try to step forward and find out what's really idiomatic, what's really it's not just that it's playable, but really idiomatic to the instrument, suitable, yeah, to the instrument.
So just talk to more musicians.
Yeah, not just talk, but really spend time with them with the instruments as well. Yeah.
And how's the Chinese music scene in Singapore? Like, it seems to be quite strong. Like when I look at all the videos coming up from, say, Singapore Chinese Orchestra or Ding Yi, and like it seems to be very lively and active there.
Yes, I think definitely in the past few decades we've come a long way. Yeah. Now I don't see myself as a insider in that circle necessarily, but I can just speak of my own observations. I think in the past, it's like comparing to when I was a child, watching Singapore Chinese Orchestra, I think definitely that SEO has really improved a lot since then. They've really come a long way, and also they've been pushed to do a lot of new compositions. So I think they're not really very surprised by many things anymore. Perhaps I think they've done a lot. Yeah. So it also speaks of an orchestra's ability, right, to adapt and to keep moving forward with times. So that of course sets the tone for the professional Chinese music scene in Singapore. And as far as I know, also there have been many young Singaporeans who ventured overseas, like to China, to further their studies. And there are quite a number of them which are very, very good performers, excellent performers. So I think the overall level of performance has also gone up. Yeah. And it's not just that. There's also the amateur scene. Yeah. There are so many groups out there in not just in schools, but in community centers, which are sort of, for neighborhood type of centers kind of thing. Yeah. And you have community center Chinese orchestras, or even like, sort of classes like Guzheng class or Erhu class, something like that, right? So I think you have plenty of opportunities. If you're ever interested in Chinese music in Singapore, there are plenty of opportunities to actually learn and join some group or something. I think it's not difficult, or to at least attend concerts. There's plenty available out there. So I think that definitely has helped to shape a lively scene, from ground up and also from top down. Yeah, like I said, professionally, because the SEO has led the way in that development, but also from ground up, that you have all these, all this amateur sort of activities that's going on that really helps build the scene. Yeah.
That's great. And there's like, are Chinese orchestras in schools as well, or is it just in?
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
I think pretty much almost every primary school, secondary school, and junior college and Polytechnic has a Chinese orchestra.
Wow, you guys are lucky. And you have a young son. Are you starting him off on many instruments?
We have instruments around the house, so sometimes he does get on the instruments and play something. I think this can't be forced.
Mm-hmm.
I've asked him before, hey, do you want to learn this? You want to learn that? And he always goes like, yes. And latest was like piano. He says, yes, I want to learn piano. Mommy, can you please teach me piano? So we go on the piano. 1-2 minutes later, he's off.
He's still young.
Yes, he's only 4. He just turned 4 this month. And he's off. But so it's not something that I can really sit him down and hey, do this, do this, do that. But at some other time when I'm least expecting it, like when I'm cooking or something, and then I hear him on the piano.
Oh.
Then he jumps on himself and he sings while he plays. And he picks out tunes by himself. He picked out hot cross buns by himself. But when I go and I want to help or instruct, and he goes like, no, I want to do this myself. I do it myself. I can do it myself. So
is it kind of like you when you were a child, perhaps?
Yes, I think so. I think the best approach is to just let him explore freely. Yes, he will do what he will do, and what I can provide is a sort of environment. Expose him to different types of music, have him listen to different music, but in a very relaxed way, recreational way. Yeah, nothing educational like very deliberate. I also do a lot of ear training with him in the same way. Like when he's playing, I hop on the piano and hey, let's do this together. Or in the shower, and I have him sing intervals. I'm like minor second, and he sings minor second, major second, minor third. He sings after me. I think he's pretty good sense of pitch. Yeah. Or when we're in the car, we're driving, and I just switch on the radio and I ask him, hey, is this in simple time or compound time?
Wow.
It's actually not that difficult, yeah. If you simplify it, in terms of like, because he likes fruits, he likes vehicles. So I always tell him, hey, if it sounds like watermelon apple, then that's simple time. If you can get those subdivisions in, right? And if you hear something like bulldozer, then that would be compound time. Yeah. And so, every time when we listen to something and I ask him to figure out, I'm like, is it bulldozer or is it like you hear apple, kind of thing?
That's really neat. I should take some theory lessons from you too. Those are interesting ways of teaching it.
I mean, I've never really taught young children, it's not really my area of specialty. So I'm also developing my own practical pedagogy as I watch my son's development. Yeah, some of these things just come on the spot. Teaching him rhythm, for example, he knows, oh, watermelon, apple, watermelon, and that what it looks like on paper. Yeah, strawberry. And sometimes I try to sing back familiar tunes like nursery rhymes back in rhythmic solfege. Like I don't know what songs are there. Yeah, I can't think of anything right, but I would just substitute those fruit names in and sing it back in. So he has an awareness of those rhythms. So I think it can be done very subtly, just by subtle.
Well, and it's also fun too. It's also in a fun way.
Yeah, to him it's just a game. It's fun. It's time with mommy. It's nothing deliberate. Like, oh, we got to sit down and be serious now and do all this. Been doing this since he was very young.
Yeah, no, it's going to be very interesting to see. You probably you will be able to develop a whole new system of teaching for little kids.
Yeah, so with him as my guinea pig, probably. But I find that, after that, when I take these same techniques, and I apply to my much older students, and of course they find it funny at first because it's so childish, right? But hey, it's actually effective. Yeah, when an oral skills training, yeah, they're like, suddenly I can get the rhythms. It's actually that simple. Yeah, it was something that just came, on the fly. I was just building it along, improvising as I went on, and it works. So But I think my son also has other interests, so I'm not sure if he will actually learn music seriously at all, or pick up any instruments, or do anything. He likes to go on the piano and play randomly, and he goes like, "I'm a composer."
That's how you do it.
He likes to proudly say, "I'm a composer," so that's very interesting. But he has many other interests as well. So I'm really not pushing it on him.
Right.
I'll just see what he chooses to do. If he chooses to learn music, or even do music professionally or anything, I will be there to support him and help him in whatever way he needs. And if he doesn't, great. I think he has many other talents as well. So
Yeah, very bright kid. So what projects do you have coming up? Like, you're a busy mom, you're teaching, and you're also composing. So do you have anything interesting to tell us about what's coming up?
well, I just finished a commission for the Eastman School of Music. That was a huge honor for me. This year is the centennial of the 100 years anniversary of the Eastman School of Music.
Oh,
So yeah, I'm really honored to have received a commission from them.
wonderful.
So I just finished with that piece, and I'm on to other projects. Two upcoming deadlines that I have in next month also would be is a commission composition by the Singapore Chinese Orchestra, and the other is an arrangement by the Ding Yi Music Company. And because of the pandemic sort of restrictions, the sizes of they're probably for like mid to large ensemble, and not so much orchestra. Now we can't do orchestral sizes anymore.
Full orchestra, yeah.
Especially with full wind section, that's all the yeah.
Right. Okay, so I guess I'm going to get all the links and things like that to your website, and so people can keep up to date with all your activities.
I need to update my website. So
that's incentive for you to update your website, right?
Yes. It is still on 2020, so I have to bring it into 2021. I have been just quite busy lately, so
Right.
and I have to, it's on my to-do list, and yeah, because like you mentioned, juggling different hats as a teacher, as a composer, as a mom, yeah, as a lecturer in the conservatory,
Right.
adjunct lecturer, but also I also teach privately, so this.
So busy.
Yeah, it's fun though, and I like that I have a flexible sort of schedule that most people don't have. I can relax in the morning before I send my kid to school. Yeah, I mean, I actually can afford some time to be to play with him, interact with him, and not just rush him off to preschool. Of course, there are certain days which I have to, because I have morning lectures or something like that. But otherwise, yeah, I get to spend time. I get to sometimes cook for him, and before picking him up, and I get to pick him early. But the bad part about this is that sometimes I have to work on weekends or at night, weird timings like that, where other people are not working.
Right. So it's a flexible schedule. So yeah.
Yeah, so which is good and bad. It could be good, like I don't necessarily have to rush to work when other people have to, but also I have to work when people don't have to, right? So
right.
but I always try to make time for my son.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it will be interesting to see what he becomes in the future.
So he grows up, kind and nice.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not really worried about him until I think he'll always find his own solutions to things. He's pretty good at that kind of thing, finding his own way around things. Sometimes it's infuriating, when you see certain solutions. It's like, oh my god. But in the long run, I think it's a good thing. He find his way. So I don't think I'll worry so much about what he's going to do in terms of his career path or anything like that. But more of, you know, I hope he does learn to get along with people, things like that. That's the sort of thing that worries me a bit more.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for spending the time and chatting with us, and hopefully making composing for Chinese instruments less scary for some composers who have never tried before. And I hope to catch up with you again soon in your future activities.
Yeah, thank you so much, Patty. I really enjoyed our chat.
Yes, it was fun. I hope we'll do it again soon. Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.